I still remember the sound before I remember the pain. It was my wedding day. The music was soft. Golden lights shimmered across the hall, and every face I loved was turned toward me. I stood there in white, holding my bouquet so tightly my fingers ached, trying to steady the storm inside my chest. I was 29 years old, and after years of waiting, surviving, and rebuilding myself, I was finally about to marry the only man who had ever made me feel safe. His name was Daniel. And that morning, when he looked at me, he smiled like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I thought that was the moment my life was finally beginning. But my brother had other plans. My older brother, Marcus, had always been the storm in our family. Loud, proud, impossible to challenge. Growing up, he had a way of filling every room until no one else had space to breathe.
My parents called him difficult.
I called him what he was dangerous, not because he was cruel in obvious ways, because he knew exactly how to smile while breaking something fragile. For years, Marcus had controlled every family gathering with his temper. Every birthday, every holiday, every celebration somehow became about him. If he was unhappy, everyone paid for it. If he was jealous, he made sure no one else could enjoy what he didn't have. And he hated Daniel from the moment we got engaged. He never said it plainly. Marcus never worked that way. Instead, he smiled too hard, shook Daniel's hand too long, made little comments that sounded like jokes but landed like knives. You sure you know what you're signing up for? He'd laugh. Or worse, to me, when no one was listening. Men like him don't stay kind forever. I ignored it. I told myself Marcus was just being Marcus bitter, controlling, threatened by the fact that someone else finally mattered more than he did. But what I didn't know that day was how far he was willing to go to ruin the one moment that was never supposed to belong to him. The ceremony had just begun. I had taken only a few steps down the aisle when Marcus stood up from the front row. At first, I thought maybe something was wrong. Maybe he was emotional. Maybe, for once, he was about to do something human. Instead, he walked straight toward me. The room went silent. I remembered the way his face looked calm, almost cold. No rage. No warning. Just something sharp and deliberate behind his eyes. Then he stopped in front of me. And before I could even speak, before I could even ask what he was doing, he hit me. Hard. So hard my head turned with the force of it. My bouquet fell. Gasps ripped through the room. My mother screamed. The music cut. And for one terrifying second, everything inside me froze. I tasted blood. My cheek burned. And standing there in my wedding dress, in front of everyone I loved, I realized my brother had not come to celebrate me. He had come to destroy me. What? He didn't know was that the man waiting for me at the altar was not about to let him. For a moment, the room forgot how to breathe. No one moved. Not my parents. Not the guests. Not even me. It was like the entire world had split open, and everyone was too shocked to understand what they had just seen. Marcus lowered his hand slowly, like what he had done was justified, like he had every right. Then he looked at me, at my face, my tears, the blood gathering at the corner of my lip, and said the words that shattered whatever was left between us. You embarrassed this family, he said. Calm/cold. Cruel, cruel. And someone needed to stop this. Stop this! As if my joy was a crime. As if my wedding was something he had the right to punish. I felt the humiliation before I felt the pain. The weight of every eye in that room.
The silence.
The shame he had dragged over me like a blade. And for one awful second, I became a little girl again small, voiceless, trapped under Marcus's anger while everyone around me pretended not to see it. That was his real betrayal, not the slap. The years. The years of fear.
The years of silence.
The years my family let him become a man. Who believed he could hurt me and still call it love? But then Daniel moved. He came down from the altar so fast, I barely saw him. 1 second, he was standing under white roses waiting to marry me. The next, he was between Marcus and me. Not angry. Not wild. Something colder. Controlled. Daniel took off his suit jacket, handed it to his best man, and stepped closer to Marcus with a calmness that frightened even me. "You're leaving," he said. Marcus laughed. It was the same laugh he had used my whole life. Arrogant, certain. The laugh of a man who had never been forced to face consequences. Or what? He asked. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't touch him. He just turned slightly and nodded once. And that was when everything changed. 2 men I didn't recognize stepped forward from the side entrance. Then another. Security? Not venue staff.
Private security.
Marcus's smile vanished. Daniel had hired them, not because he expected drama, because he knew Marcus. Because while I was still hoping my brother might behave like family, Daniel had quietly prepared for the possibility that he wouldn't. That truth hit me harder than the slap. Daniel had seen what I spent years trying to minimize. He had believed me without needing proof. "Escort him out," Daniel said.
Marcus tried to laugh again, but it sounded thinner this time.
"You think throwing me out changes anything?" Daniel looked him dead in the eye. "No," he said. "But what happens after this will?" That was when Marcus started shouting. He called me dramatic, ungrateful, weak. He told the room. I had always turned people against him. He said Daniel was being manipulated. He said this family owed him loyalty. And for the first time in his life, no one defended him. Not my mother. Not my father. Noru to. Because the truth was bleeding in front of them in white silk and trembling hands. And they could no longer pretend they hadn't seen it. As security took Marcus by the arms, he turned toward my parents. Expecting rescue, it never came. He was dragged out of my wedding, screaming my name. But for the first time, I didn't flinch. I stood there shaking, heartbroken, exposed, and deeply humiliated. But somewhere beneath the pain, something unfamiliar began to rise. Not fear. Because the worst thing he could do to me had finally happened. And somehow, I was still standing. The room stayed silent long after Marcus was gone. I could hear my own breathing. Uneven. Fragile. My cheek still burned. My hands still trembled. The wedding I had dreamed about 4 months was in pieces around me. And yet, Daniel turned to me like none of that mattered more than I did. He stepped closer, touched my face so gently it almost broke me, and asked only one thing. "Do you still want to marry me?" Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Should we cancel?" Just that. "Do you still choose this?" And through the pain, through the shame, through the wreckage Marcus had tried to leave behind, I looked at the man
Who had protected my dignity without stealing my voice.
and I said, yes. The guests stood when I said it. Not because the ceremony had resumed, because something else had happened in that room. They had watched a man try to destroy me, and then watched me remain. So I married Daniel with a bruised cheek, trembling hands, and mascara-stained lashes. And it was still the most beautiful moment of my life. But Marcus's real downfall came after the wedding, because Daniel had done more than remove him. He had documented everything. The venue cameras had captured the assault. So had 3 guest phones. By morning, Marcus had lost more than his temper. He lost his reputation. His job placed him on immediate suspension. Then, termination. His girlfriend left within days. Family friends stopped answering his calls. Even relatives who had defended him 4 years finally stepped back when they saw.
What he had done with their own eyes.
And when he tried to claim I had provoked him, no one listened. Not anymore. My parents, for the first time in their lives, stopped protecting him. They paid for my medical visit. They apologized. Quietly. Shamefully. Too late to erase anything, but enough to tell me they finally understood what their silence had cost me. I didn't forgive Marcus. Some wounds should not be rushed into softness. I blocked his number. I refused his messages. I let consequence do what love never could teach him. He was not untouchable. That was the revenge. Not screaming. Not revenge in the dramatic way people imagine. It was watching the man who built his power on fear discover that fear stops working the moment people stop bowing to it. Marcus thought humiliating me in public would destroy me. Instead, he exposed himself. And in trying to ruin my wedding, he gave me something I had never had before. Freedom! Because sometimes justice does not arrive with violence. Sometimes it arrives in witnesses, in truth, in consequences. And sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is survive the moment meant to break her and never hand her power back again.